Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this session on digital connectivity, an enabler and a foundation. Thanks also to Transform Africa Economic Forum for inviting me and for putting together this amazing panel to share and discuss both challenges and opportunities in harnessing the benefits of this new digital revolution for faster economic growth and the role that we can all play in this smart continental free trade area. My name is Onika Makwakwa, as it has been mentioned, and I'm the Africa Regional Coordinator for the Alliance for Affordable Internet, a digital inclusion initiative at the World Wide Web Foundation. I'm pleased to be here. I would like to invite the panel for this morning to join me. First, we have Atef Halmi, Senior Director at Orange, Middle East Region. Amrote Abdallah, General Manager at Microsoft for Africa. Sherif Antigu, General Manager, Guinea Post and Telecommunications Authority Regulator. Rob Shooter, Group President and CEO at MTN. While building across, do I have a chair? Sorry. While building cross-border infrastructure is still capital intensive and takes a long time, the existing mobile telecom infrastructure, fiber optic networks, as well as satellite provides market connectivity immediately. We are experiencing a rapid growth of mobile usage in Africa with 80% mobile penetration and about 25% internet users penetration, against 99% and 47% respectively at the global level. Today's session title frames a conversation that is critical to all of us here. As the digital revolution hurdles ahead, how can we ensure that it is both an enabler and a foundation for the transformation that is inclusive for everyone in Africa? With that, I am looking forward to hearing the perspectives and insights and solutions as well that can be provided by this incredible assembly of panelists who are in the trenches of getting Africa connected here today. I'm going to take my seat and have a conversation with them, which I hope later on you will start thinking about how you wish to engage with them as well, so that this is both directions. Thank you. Do I have a mic? Yes. Let's fix this. Great. Thank you once again for joining us this morning. I've already had a pleasure of having a really fiery morning chat with each one of you, and I'm really pleased that you are here to share with us. African nations are at different stages with regards to connectivity and achieving where we want to be. And there continues to be bottlenecks that need to be addressed through better collaboration. If you would be able to share with us the models of public-private partnerships that have been successful in actually fast-tracking connectivity in a way that enables digital inclusion. We'll start with you, Atef.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. Please allow me, before just sharing my input about this, to share a personal experience which is very relevant to where we are today and the topics that we've been discussing. I was honored and privileged in June 2014 to chair the WIS World Summit for Information Technology Plus 10 that was held in Geneva. And in the margin of this major event, I was again privileged to be invited by former Minister of Communication Rwanda, His Excellency Mr. Nelson Jimani, together with Dr. Touré, to be the guest of honor for a reception that has been held. To be honest, by that time, Rwanda was not one of the strong players in Africa. And our messages, Dr. Touré and myself, we confirmed one thing, that's it is a time for the African nations and countries to leverage the power of ICT for the welfare of their societies and to achieve the socio-economic development. Today, I'm very proud that I'm visiting this very promising country. They are now a landmark and a model of success and a bright spot in Africa, and they have made great advancements in leveraging the ICT, thanks to the vision and the leadership of the country, with a full respect to what Dr. Touré is doing to promote ICT in Africa. Coming back to the third point, which is very important, and is public-private partnership is a cornerstone, especially when it comes traditionally to the mega infrastructure projects that have been implemented throughout the continent. And I think their collaboration between public and private has to continue and grow more now with more ambitions that we have for the African country, especially if we talk about a single marketplace, about free border trade between countries and stuff like that. We need more and more investment in the infrastructure. So in this traditional way of doing business, we have a couple of examples that have been implemented. The first one is related to Rwanda, where there was a project for PPP, whereby it was about between 10 to 15 years to supply the bulk capacity of 1 gigabits plus bandwidth. And this has a great impact on what we have seen so far in Rwanda. The second success story coming from Republic of Congo, where there is another PPP projects with a more concession for 25 years to build the backbone in the country and to supply links at national and cross-border links as well. When it comes to the company that I'm representing today, Orange, we have very strong commitment to Africa, where we invest every year around $1 billion in infrastructure like fiber optics, 3G and 4G network, expanding services to rural and ultra-rural areas, and for data centers and services as well. As I mentioned in the beginning, the PPP projects were concentrating only on infrastructure, but now it is more importantly that private investment and public-private partnership should focus on digital inclusion services. Now it is more important to focus on the usage. Definitely when we talk about e-government services, upgrade the health service, e-education, e-agriculture, and the digital content, all those new investment opportunities that will have a great impact on the African continent. If we are talking about the usage, which is very important, there is another area which is much more important, which is the development of the digital skills of our young generations in the African continent, which represent a major really element when it comes to growing the digital economy. And definitely encouraging innovation, entrepreneurship is becoming of prime importance as well.
Great. Thank you for that intervention. So what I'm hearing is that it's not just the infrastructure, but also some of the demand side issues that come with being able to say and be proudly that we are proudly connected. If you could share with us from the perspective of the work that you are doing, how you are able to leverage these public-private partnerships in a way that sort of goes beyond the big infrastructure projects, right? Where we are able to bring connectivity to your average African, I want to say average African, just to be provocative, because the reality of it is that the people in the rural areas, the people in the village, women, are the ones who are still left out of this opportunity. So what is different in the kind of public-private partnership that Microsoft is spearheading in that.
Thank you. So I think maybe just to pick up from where His Excellency the President started, which is that for us to have the economic integration, that we first need to start with the technological integration. And for us to actually be able to do that, you have to start with policy integration. That's the first piece. So even as we're talking about some of the new technological advancements, the policy integration that we need to do today, if we look at across the 16 economic zones that we have, if we're looking at some of the new technologies that are coming up and about, I talk specifically around cloud policies that we have. How do we get to that stage where we're now talking about last mile access? And so for a lot of the work that we have done at Microsoft, and I'll give specific examples, over the last 5 years, we have brought on board about 500,000 SMEs online. With our TV White Spaces project, we have launched in 16 of them across 5 countries. There's a lot of them that is embedded very much at the heart of the partnership, the willingness, but also the avant-garde thinking that we have in some countries. Now, is it enough for us to be able to solve some of the last mile questions that we have? And it's difficult to comment sitting between MTN and Orange, but the ROI for driving rural connectivity, the dollars are still not making sense. So we need to collaboratively, both public and also public and private, really start thinking around how do we think about new delivery methods. Some of the startups and innovators that we have had a pleasure to work with have ranged from agriculture to fintech, and I know there's a lot of reference and mentions around financial services, to health. How do we think about smart delivery, new business models that allows a startup and entrepreneur to make money, while telcos, private service providers can also monetize on some of these opportunities? So I think there's a lot for us to explore and do, and happy to share more in detail as we go along.
Great, thank you. Before we move on to Sharif, if I could ask the technical team, we have a really bad echo here. I'm not sure if it's affecting any of you from hearing each other. So perhaps if those mics could be switched off, that might help. Thank you. Sharif?
Thank you, Onika. I think I'm going to give you guys some more echo because I'm going to speak in French. So, je voudrais dire merci pour la question. Je voudrais parler un peu du partenaire public-privé, l'exemple que nous avons au niveau de la Guinée. C'est vrai que, comme l'a dit mon collègue, c'est l'une des meilleures approches pour pouvoir non seulement financer les infrastructures, mais aussi développer le secteur. Mais ce qu'il faut retenir, c'est que le partenaire public-privé, ce qui fait le succès du partenaire public-privé, c'est la touche privée qui vient s'ajouter à la gestion de l'État. Donc, parce que ce n'est rien d'autre que le fait que l'État fait appel à des partenaires pour pouvoir financer et gérer des infrastructures ou des ouvrages, pour pouvoir assurer la connectivité ou pouvoir assurer des services publics. Le cas au niveau de la Guinée, on a beaucoup de partenaires, beaucoup d'exemples, surtout dans le secteur minier, mais dans le secteur de télécommunications, c'était surtout pour le raccordement de la Guinée au réseau de câbles ACE, Africa Cable Europe. Pour ceci, ce qui s'est passé, c'est que nous avons fait appel aux différents acteurs du secteur. On a eu un financement de la Banque mondiale, bien sûr, mais l'efficacité et ce que nous pouvons dire, ce qui a été remarquable surtout, c'est les résultats qui ont été obtenus une fois que nous avons mis cela en place. Pour que ça soit mis en place, il faudrait d'abord voir le cadre légal et réglementaire, parce qu'il faudrait mettre les investisseurs en confiance pour pouvoir sécuriser leur investissement, ce qui fut fait. L'État a créé une structure avec les opérateurs, les différents acteurs, une structure, une société anonyme qui a une gestion privée et qui est aussi à des contrôles. Ce qui nous a permis, l'État s'est retiré complètement là-dessus et a laissé la gestion à cette entité pour pouvoir obtenir l'objectif atteint. Si nous regardons depuis le success story, parce que si vous faites un partenariat public-privé qui n'a pas un impact social et économique, ça n'a pas de sens. L'impact socio-économique, vous avez déjà que lorsque on a été raccordé au câble sous-marin, nous pouvons voir que le taux de pénétration a augmenté. On a quitté de 8 à 20%. Cela a été dû à la demande en capacité Internet que les gens ont voulu. Avant l'arrivée du câble, on était à moins de 50 mégabits par seconde et aujourd'hui on se retrouve entre les 18 et 19 gigabits par seconde. Cette demande est là. Mais comme l'a dit mon collègue, il ne suffit pas seulement de faire les infrastructures. Il faudrait aussi créer des content, local content. Donc il faut non seulement voir qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire, l'infrastructure est arrivée, il faudrait arriver au niveau des zones rurales, on est au niveau des zones urbaines, mais ça permettra aussi de développer le backbone que nous sommes en train de faire actuellement et d'atteindre l'objectif d'interconnecter la Guinée avec les autres pays limitrophes. Nous avons la chance aujourd'hui que la Guinée partage les frontières entre 6 autres pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. C'est pour cela d'ailleurs dans l'Alliance Smart Africa, nous avons pour objectif l'interconnectivité de la sous-région. Et donc je pense que cela va être fait bientôt, dès la mise en service du backbone national. Donc vous voyez que le PPP, le partenariat public-privé, permet non seulement de développer les infrastructures, avoir un impact positif au niveau de la population, mais aussi assurer la connectivité. Et pour cela, les 3 ingrédients que je viens de dire, à savoir la politique, l'économie et la mise en œuvre, sont nécessaires pour pouvoir avoir un success story.
Great. Yes, absolutely. Implementation. I think we know all too well that we are really good at coming up with beautiful policies, but implementation sometimes tends to be where our challenges are. Rob, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, maybe just a few quick comments. For MTN, if we look across our subscriber base, we have about 220 million subscribers, and only about 70 are currently connected to the internet. We really would like to move that to 2/3 over the next few years. So that means we need to bring another 100 million people, or roughly, onto our network. So it's a big challenge. And what we've discovered with the customers who've come onto the network over the last few years is that people in our markets are youthful, they're smart, they're resourceful, and when the coverage is there and the handsets are there, the adoption is quite quick. So much as we want to move away from infrastructure, you know, there's not much you can do if there's no network. So for us, rural data coverage is one of the most important objectives. It is actually one of the few industries where if you build it, they do come. And there is so much information on the internet that it is really a magnet for people and a great driver of growth, as we know, in our markets. I think a very good example of public-private partnership was our colleagues in MTN Ghana. So they worked with local communities and vendors and the Ghana Investment Fund and basically came up with very low-cost rural coverage solutions on a revenue share with the equipment providers, secured and maintained by the local community, and then with the Ghanaian Investment Fund arranging a lot of the connectivity, the bandwidth, the approvals to erect the sites, etc. This has been a very good success story for us, and we really think that, you know, we say at MTN that not one of us is as smart as all of us, and the scale of the challenge we've got, we really are going to have to work together in innovative ways, and, you know, progressive, positive, with a can-do spirit, and I think we can make a big difference over the next few years.
Great. As I'm going to move on, and I want to start with you again, Rob, for this next question. But before I do that, I'm going to reach out to our audience and say that if any of you has an example of a PPP that you would like to share with us that is cross-border, we are trying to have the common market, right? Please get ready to share that with us, because I think it's really important to begin to expand some of what's happening within our borders nationally to looking at how this PPP would shape out across borders within the continent. So, Rob, the recent dynamics in the disruption of telco-driven mobile transfers is, you know, just something that we are all sort of dealing with, but how can the telcos further refine their offerings to really support what we are trying to achieve here, and that is the cross-border movement of activity, money, goods, transfers?
I think, you know, I think mobile money is just one of the most exciting aspects of the industry today. And I think it's important to realize that what we're really doing is that we built a system over many years for customers to buy prepaid airtime, prepaid data, very deep informal distribution network, and we are really repurposing that to bring them into the world of transactional banking, so they can easily and simply, you know, store cash, make payments, and be connected to the world. And I think we are well through the first phase of that. What becomes more and more important now, to your question, is it also easy to make payments across operators and across borders, international remittances, also to receive funds from the African diaspora in a way that's convenient, safe, and cost-effective. So because MTN, we implemented mobile money across 14 of our markets, we already had to do a lot of interconnection of our own operations. We see it as a very manual process. It's often done one country to one country. And so I think it's very important as a community of operators and banks and governments and businesses, we need to find a much simpler way to build the points of interconnection. I think this is, really, really important. And we're working hard on that at the moment, and I think we have some exciting news to announce on that over the next few months.
Is that possible when we still seem to be struggling with roaming, for example? So can we really imagine that interoperability across borders on the mobile transfer side when we're still really negotiating and not quite getting to the smooth operation of being able to drive 30 minutes across the South African border and still be connected to my service?
I think so. We already have a lot of what we call remittance corridors open today, cross-operator. So I know I was in Uganda recently in the call center, and there's a customer calling in because they'd been sent money from M-Pesa customer in Kenya. So that is a corridor that's been opened. Many similar corridors are open. They do work. It's just a very manual process, and it's quite inefficient if you try and do it every time between two operators. So I think it's very possible, and I think we will make good progress in the future.
I fully agree with Rob, but again, I would like to refer to what has been covered today in the introductory speech about what is the new era for Africa. The new era is to have the digital marketplace and to have the cross-border trade. And definitely mobile money is one very strong component on achieving this vision and implementing it in the right way. However, there are a lot to add to be able to achieve this. There is the digital identity that has to be placed for secure transaction. There is the regulatory agreements between the countries, and there are a lot of other things. However, to confirm the importance of the next era of having a digital marketplace for Africa and the impact on the economy and the impact on the citizen, let us just share the example that we all know about Alibaba. To the extent that Harvard Business Schools says that what Alibaba has done for the Chinese economy and to the support for the SMEs and to ease the trade for the Chinese citizen was not by any means done in the history before through governments, policies, banks, and other organizations. So I think having this example in place, we can put the actual implementation steps, and if there is a will, there is a way always. We as technology people and as business people, and sometimes involved in the negotiation with the government authorities, we have to put the framework that will allow really the usage of all these services and with the leverage of the success that we have in mobile money in the African continent as well.
So if we are to achieve this single digital market, what are the opportunities? What are the bottlenecks? What is it that we need to do? Do we need, so that we're not waiting for another 30 years for that to happen?
You want to take it?
Any one of you, please take it.
For you.
Okay. Ladies first.
Look, I think there are a couple of things that we haven't talked about. One is we need to start creating the ecosystem, right? It's all nice to all of us have affordable phones, smart or other, and we can all talk all day, but at the end of the day, it's also what kind of content are we consuming, right? And there's a big push to get more and more people to develop, become developers, etc. But if you're developing, you know, a dancing elephant as an application, it really means nothing. So how do we actually start building the right capabilities, the right skills to actually go to address the right issues that we have in Africa? So first is around the skills, but more importantly, it's around the ecosystem. How do we actually develop this for ourselves? I think there was a mention earlier, which is that, you know, a lot of the content that we consume today, as it relates to smart technologies, is built and developed outside. How do we make that our own? So I think it's us creating the enabling environment, having the right policies to be able to do that. The second one is around coming to SMEs and small businesses. Look, if today a large portion of our employers are actually the SMEs, how do we actually make access to this digital marketplace affordable, right? With the right infrastructure, with the right skills, with the right fees. And so I think that's not just, you know, the burden of the telcos to solve, but I think it's all of us, right? And there's conversation around connectivity that we need to think about, that the telcos are doing, that ourselves and others are also driving. So how do we make that at the cornerstone of what we need to do? Last but not least, it's policy, and I know that we come back to it, but you know, there's a lot of it that we can talk about, but how much of it can we actually execute on, and how much of it can actually be monetized so that it's actually a win-win? So, you know, the partnerships are lovely, and I think, you know, we can sign a lot of MOUs, but at the end of the day, it's what is in it for the public sector, what is in it for the private sector, for us to really take the right strides moving forward. The example of India, I think, is an interesting one. Looking at Jio as a network, as they established, you know, and bringing in 100 million users online in 6 months is remarkable. Now, granted that it's a lot easier in one country and one regulation with over 1 billion people to connect is easier. But with the fragmented community and countries that we have, how do we actually make that a reality, right? So that we're not waiting for the bricks and mortars to be in place for us to be able to advance this.
So Amrote, if there is one particular policy, and there obviously isn't just one, but one thing that you would recommend from a policy point of view of how do we get to a point where we can mainstream this kind of digitization, you know, which sector of policy would you land on?
I think I'm going to refer to my colleague from
the regulator on the hot seat.
Yeah, thank you. Mais je voudrais dire que ça, ce sera un peu difficile parce que, comme elle l'a dit tout à l'heure, ma collègue l'a dit, au niveau de l'Inde, au niveau de la Chine, il n'y a pas beaucoup de difficultés. C'est un seul continent, c'est un seul peuple. Donc c'est une seule décision qui est prise et qui est mise en place, donc une seule politique qui est là. Le cadre légal et réglementaire au niveau des continents africains, c'est plusieurs. Il y a 5 ans, il y a combien de pays? 54 ou 56 pays. Donc c'est difficile de cela, mais il faudrait utiliser, comme nous avons au niveau des différentes sous-régions, des organisations au niveau des sous-régions qui peuvent harmoniser le cadre légal et réglementaire pour pouvoir intégrer cela dans l'objectif que nous voulons. Ce que je voudrais dire, pour pouvoir atteindre l'objectif du réseau unique africain, je l'ai déjà dit, il faudrait partir au niveau du cadre légal, harmoniser le cadre légal et réglementaire de notre système. Il faudrait aussi voir l'éducation, comme elle a dit. Aujourd'hui, dans le briefing, j'ai bien aimé l'objectif au niveau de MTN qui a parlé de Chase, Connectivity, Handset, Affordability, Services and Education. L'éducation aussi est qui? Il ne faudrait pas seulement développer les infrastructures, mais aussi il faudrait faire la formation et le renforcement des capacités au niveau de notre population. Il faudrait aussi voir le développement des infrastructures, mais faire un investissement intelligent. Parce que si nous voulons interconnecter les autres pays, par exemple les pays qui ont accès à la mer et les pays qui n'ont pas accès à la mer, il faudrait faire une coopération, une collaboration entre les différents pays pour que l'investissement que nous sommes en train de faire dans notre pays puisse favoriser nos voisins. Donc pour que l'interconnectivité soit là. Parce qu'une fois que nous arrivons à faire cela, nous pouvons aussi développer les points d'échange Internet. Comme on a dit, pourquoi le trafic doit aller dehors? Pourquoi ne pas domestiquer le trafic chez nous? Cela permettra de réduire les coûts. Et si les coûts sont réduits, ça permet de réduire les tarifs au niveau des abonnés. Si les tarifs des abonnés sont réduits, ça permet de dégager et d'augmenter le pouvoir d'achat de nos populations. Donc je pense que pour cela, tous ces ingrédients réunis nous permettra de développer et d'améliorer la connectivité au niveau de la sous-région.
Great, and since you are the regulator who spoke about making sure things are implemented, I have hope that we'll actually get some of this done. So before I move on...
Monica, would you mind just one comment? Because just Success brings success, and we just mentioned about what happened in Rwanda. And if we look for Kenya, for example, with M-Pesa, is a great success where it's becoming best business practice in the world. And we have so many success in Ethiopia and in South Africa and Egypt and stuff like that. So now for the one issue that if we really were serious about growing the economy and having this digital marketplace, we can start not definitely with the 54 countries in Africa, but if we can have just bilateral trade agreements between 2 or 3 countries, to a country, and then we can add, I think this would represent a successful model. So the one thing that I would require, if possible, and will make a big difference, is to remove the barrier of the cross-border, okay, especially in infrastructure, connectivity, and digital content. This does not need a lot of work, but it is simple collaboration between the stakeholders, regulatory frameworks, telecom operators, technology providers, and we can just build on this success.
Okay. I really want to make sure we get to some of your questions. So while you get your questions ready, I would like to invite Dr. Bilo Musa. Is he here? Dr. Bilo Musa. He's the Director of Innovations and Industry Relations at Huawei Southern Africa region. And he is going to give us a short intervention on what Huawei is doing around connectivity. But thereafter, please, we would like to hear from you, your thoughts, questions, comments for the panel.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. I'm Bello Musa with Huawei Southern Africa in charge of innovations. Yes, today, without any doubt, our continent, Africa, is progressing towards greater connectivity. Internet usage is increasing, but when you come to look at it, there is a big cleavage between urban and rural area, between usage between men and women. Around the world, it is estimated around more than 700 million population are not yet covered, and around 30% of this population is in Africa. 21% of African population or area are not covered. Well, there are numerous challenges to this, one of which is eventually the cost, notwithstanding the improvement of the existing infrastructure. Also, the problem of power availability, energy availability is another problem. We think that the way to face these numerous and complex challenges is to come up with creative and reliable and scalable solutions for Africa. I'm very proud with the work that we are doing in Huawei. We developed some solution that we call Rural Star. My colleagues from the operators will agree with me that the cost of deploying a network in the rural area is mainly on the infrastructure, the towers that we use, the transmission that we use. We have to use either satellites, we have to build big towers that will support our radio, and even the radio equipment itself is constitute a big cost of network deployment. So just imagine if we can find a solution that will simplify all these elements of network for a specific environment or specific scenario, which is a rural connectivity. So that's what we have done in Huawei. We try to find alternatives of the transmission. Instead of using satellite or expensive microwave, we rely on an existing coverage or existing spectrum, which is LTE spectrum. We can use the LTE spectrum to relay the communication between a mother tower to a small tower. Well, as I mentioned earlier, one of the challenges for Africa is power. We don't have access to power grid. Now, if we can use solar energy, it's available 24/7, 360 days a year. We can power our stations. So that's what we have done. We use solar power, 5 to 6 panels per site. Instead of using big tower, we can use poles. Even wooden poles can make it. And then we simplify all the redundant element for the radio access technology. And it's working. We have had a lot of examples around the world, in Africa, for instance, in Ghana, we deploy such solution. We call it wood, magic wood. It's a miracle. Just on the wood, we put out our radio equipment, and then we cover all the population. And believe me, the simple fact of having connectivity in a village changes a lot. It changes life. It gives access to the little kid. It gives it access to the online resources. The farmer, which is in the very far remote area in the village, who is growing his mango or avocado, has access to the e-commerce platform that he can send his product. He can sell his product at a very good and competitive price. So we do believe that the solution for Africa, connectivity, relies on innovation. And here I call all the partners, could be private, public, and all the industry players to join together and then make a better connected Africa happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. Do we have a mic on the floor to help us collect questions? We'll take 3 for the first round.
Hi, good morning. I'm Pavan Dugal. I'm the chairman of the International Commission on Cybersecurity Law and president of cyberlaws.net. As an advocate working in cybersecurity and as assisting the government of India in coming up with the biggest government of India e-marketplace, which is expected to have 5% of the total GDP of India in the next 2 years, we've realized that cybersecurity is of tremendous significance. Not just for connectivity, but also for having single digital markets. And in that particular space, when I was listening to the thought leaders this morning and the panelists, there was almost a unanimity that there's a need for harmonization of legal frameworks in Africa. The International Commission on Cybersecurity Law helps collate legal principles concerning cybersecurity and helps governments to come up with national policies and legal frameworks to promote and protect and preserve cybersecurity. So in this context, I wanted to ask the panelists, how significant is cybersecurity in your respective viewpoints when I'm talking about the CFTA, when I'm talking of the single digital market? Because my vision is, it's not just transform Africa. From transform Africa, we have to go to leading Africa, or Africa the leader. The thoughts of the panelists. Thanks.
Great, thank you. We'll take a second one. There's a hand here, and there's another one this side.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ashutosh. I am from India. Just wanted to share one of the things which will also connect to what Mr. Dugal said, which is that when we're talking about digital connections and we're talking of payments, we're talking of commerce, there'll also be this thing that we'll have to think of, which is digital identity. Now, one of the things that has happened in India in the last probably a decade is the Aadhaar, which is a digital identity which is helping financial institutions, banking correspondents, government organizations come together to provide services to the citizens. So we see now an application which has been driven by the government of India called BHIM, Bharat Interface for Money Transfer. We have Aadhaar, which is overlaying BHIM. We have financial institutions which are coming together. And we have banking correspondents which are helping even a small retailer in a village in India, helping people on the ground getting money from their relatives who are working in large cities. So I would imagine that will be another issue that, although in this case we are talking of cross-border, because India, as Ms. Abdullah also pointed out, is one country, but we'll have to think of digital identity which can cross across the border to help those things happen. And I'm sure the panel would have some thoughts around it. Thank you.
Great. And I think we had another hand here. Could you raise your hand so they can see on the second row? There she is with the mic.
Hello. My name is Dr. Sipula. I'm a medical doctor. I come from South Africa. I do a lot of work around innovating for sustainable development. The question I want to raise is, in my workspace, the amount of infrastructure that is being built is highly appreciated because we need that in order for us to scale products that we are producing for sustainable development. But there is a problem. Whatever product you produce that is digital is always faced with scalability, particularly when you're talking about health in Africa. The problem of scalability comes from the user having access to the best infrastructure and being less technologically savvy to use that infrastructure. This is how my daughter puts it to me. He says, what you old people don't get is that we, the new generation, don't want to buy bread from your bakery. We want to own the bakery so that we can be able to decide what kind of bread to bake and for who, using the current infrastructure, but owning the bakery. And what I hear today resonates to most of the solutions that are being put forth. They only make my child a consumer and not an owner of the technology, such that he can make a villager adopt it rapidly, because a villager's child has been taught the value of technology and understand technology from grade 1. And I want to know, when you're talking PPPs, to what extent do you put investment that run parallel with that requirement so that you've got an educated consumer that will rapidly adopt technology? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, those are all very great questions. Thank you very much for participating. If we have time, we may come back for another round, but I want to give our panelists here an opportunity. Can we please start with you?
Sure. I'm actually quite excited to hear about India. Look, I think what India has done with Aadhaar is actually one of the most revolutionizing, sort of both on a policy side in terms of the government initiative, but also the opportunity it has created for us as a company. So I'll give an example. In partnership with the government, and actually in Andhra Pradesh, we've launched a Skype Aadhaar project, which effectively allows anybody with a digital identity to be able to stand in court in India, whereby you can virtually log in using your Skype ID, as many of you would, but it would automatically identify who you are as a person and validate your identity. So once that authentication has happened, you're able to stand in court in trial virtually. So there are definitely ways for private companies to come in, and this ties to your earlier question around what can we do. There are opportunities for private companies to plug in once the frameworks has been set. Now, as we're thinking of our own sort of continent and within our borders, the African broader borders, look, it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to some of the things that we can do around identity. I think the other one where we, I think, as African countries are piloting is around blockchain, for instance, where Rwanda is one of the few countries that is looking at blockchain for land registry, which is remarkable. Sierra Leone has just effectively used blockchain to conduct voting and monitor elections. So there are definitely ways for us to, I refrain the word leapfrog, but really be at par with the adoption and use of relevant technologies as we see it fit for us today.
Okay, so Atef, do you want to tackle the same question?
Yeah, actually I would like to touch bases on the first and second question because they are more or less related. Definitely the issue of cybersecurity is very important with the increase in the usage of the technology and applications, and now it's going to be more complex with the introduction of IoT and artificial intelligence. So you need here to protect the individual, the organization, the society, and the country at the highest level. So there are different kind of security measures that should be taken in order to protect the interest and covering the aspects that might create concern for the regulators when it comes to expanding the services, especially when we talk about digital marketplace and others. Having said that, there are multiple levels of security that have to be introduced. We mentioned the experience of India. Let me add to it. Now, as mobile operators, Orange has came with what we call the digital identity to make sure that any transactions on the internet has to be trusted, authorized in the right way. The GSMA has taken this product and now they call it Mobile Connect, and they are in discussion with telecom operators to make sure that we can use digital identity as one of the technology identification solutions that cover some of the aspects that might be created due to the execution of any transaction on the internet.
Okay. Rob?
Yeah, maybe just a contribution on a few of the questions. I think the concept of rapid scale, it's just been amazing what's happened in the world over the last 20 years. If you look at the rate of adoption, for example, of radio, then television, then fixed internet, mobile internet, social media, these are exponentially fast. So, our experience, at least in the new services, is if you have utility, it fulfills a real need, you have ease of use, and you have accessibility, the rapid scaling comes. So I think, we should focus much more on what is the problem we're trying to solve and what is the solution that's readily available, I think, if we want rapid scale. I'm sure there are many lessons also from the Indian market, particularly what they've done in mobile payments. But I would also remind us that Africa really was the birthplace of mobile money. And I think we learned a lot over the years. And our challenge now is to move sort of from the 2.0 to 3.0 with the advanced services and with the rapid scaling. And I think finally, just to return to the first question, cybersecurity and fraud is a big risk and a big concern. In the top 10 risk universe of MTN, the cybersecurity is in the top 5. And particularly so when we talk about digital adoption and financial inclusion, that these systems are built on trust. So it would be catastrophic if we brought a whole generation into the world of mobile money, moving from cash to mobile money, and then there was some fraud or cybersecurity event that negatively affected that. So I think it's a big, big topic around what we're discussing today. And I think the more harmonization there is of regulation, of policy, of approach, would make life very much easier and simpler for everybody. Thank you.
Great. So there's still, though, the question around ownership, right? Because I think that really gets into that whole trust relationship between our consumers and corporations as well as government. I think Africa's youth wants to be more than just content consumers online. Content that's also not in a language that's their language. We are looking at a generation that is very proud to be African, that is not interested in half a loaf is better than nothing kind of rhetoric. So how do we really assure that we are developing these partnerships and also negotiating for them to have that kind and level of empowerment that enables them to more than just learn online, but to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, if that's what they aspire to be?
I'll try to jump on that one.
Disruptive kind of stuff.
OK. Je pense que la question qu'il a posée, elle est pertinente. Si on regarde aujourd'hui le développement rapide de mobile money, c'est que c'est une innovation qui est venue trouver une solution à un problème social. Si nous avons une innovation que nous faisons qui ne trouve pas, qui n'est pas une solution à un problème social, il n'y aura pas de succès. Donc si l'enfant, comme il a dit, son enfant a dit aujourd'hui que je veux être propriétaire de ce que vous développez, c'est qu'il veut pouvoir dicter ce qu'il veut faire avec. Donc aujourd'hui dans notre système, on le dit toujours, on le disait avant, que le client est roi. Et je pense que cette fois-ci, le client est roi et le secteur des télécoms commence déjà à comprendre cela. Les opérateurs de téléphonie mobile commencent à comprendre déjà que le client est roi. Donc il faut les écouter. et satisfaire la demande de ses clients pour que nous puissions développer ce secteur-là. Donc, il ne s'agit pas seulement, comme je l'ai dit, de faire des investissements intelligents. Il s'agit de faire des investissements intelligents. Vous pouvez développer les infrastructures, les mettre à la disposition de la population, mais si le prix n'est pas abordable, finalement, si le prix n'est pas abordable, s'il n'y a pas de contenu africain, comme on l'a dit, pour qu'ils puissent s'approprier de l'outil, ça ne va pas permettre le développement comme on veut, ça ne va pas permettre d'atteindre les objectifs que nous voulons. Donc il faudrait être à l'écoute de l'abonné, et je pense que les opérateurs de téléphonie mobile comprennent cela déjà. Ils ont trouvé la solution est sortie pour le mobile money. Comment maintenant développer ce mobile money comme il a été fait au niveau de l'Inde? C'est vrai que l'Inde, c'est un seul continent. Si vous avez 20% de la population qui utilise le mobile money, vous dépassez déjà la croissance au niveau de l'Afrique. Donc, développement du contenu local à travers l'écoute des abonnés que nous avons, développement des infrastructures intelligentes qui vont permettre de réduire le coût pour la population, parce que nous avons vu à travers toutes les discussions ici aujourd'hui qu'il y a une relation positive entre investir dans les infrastructures et une croissance économique. Aujourd'hui, tous les pays que nous voyons qui ont une haute croissance économique, c'est qu'il y a eu des infrastructures qui sont abordables, qui sont là, qui sont disponibles.
If I may just jump in on your question around how do we actually drive the innovation piece. And allow me to give specific example. I'll mention a company called Movas. They're out of Kenya. They've been around for the last 5 years. The way the business started is they actually started as a credit lending company in Somalia. Why Somalia? Because Somalia had a curfew set and starting at 6:30 p.m. So at 7 p.m. if you are out of phone credit, you're fresh out of luck. So these young men and women came together and created an online platform that allows you to buy online credit online and be able to repay it at a small premium. They've gone from there to actually do loans, services, savings, and now they've actually reached 13 million users across 6 countries, including Pakistan. So the scalability of the business is there because of the need. And I think it comes to the question that the gentleman asked, which is, if we can build for problems that we have, whether it's agriculture, whether it's health, whether it's education, we should be able to adopt the right technology at the right pace. And because exactly to your point that consumers today are more savvy than they've ever been. They want it at their own time, at the right price, at their own will. So we need to be able to be flexible because there's very little around the technology that will change today. There's very little that will change around the technology. It's all about the business model. So how do we create the right business model that allows us to be at par with the rest of the world?
Great. Before we go, can I just get a time check in terms of how much time we have? But I'd like to get 3 more last round of questions before we get to wrap up.
We have about...
There's a hand there and one here.
Yes, Onika, we have about 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. 3 questions, that's it. There's one here and microphone come down here. Maybe we have 2 and there's a 3rd one there.
Thank you. What a great panel. My name is Magnus Conte. I am the Executive Director for the Community Health Academy with Last Mile Health. And our interest is in leveraging technology at the last mile to train community health workers to improve their access to high quality training, but also to use e-learning platforms to train the government leaders that lead and support community health workers. So we want to use existing networks or improve networks to have that access for community health workers at the last mile. But what we see is that this challenge of developing the infrastructure to extend connectivity to the last mile is continuously being put forward as a barrier. But the question I want to pose is, why do we have MTN, the other network service providers that you have here today or not present here, building separate towers or building separate infrastructure individually across these various countries? Why don't you pool your resources together in a collaborative to ensure that you can deploy your resources, your funding that you have, your investments, to rapidly increase the connectivity across these countries to reach the last mile, thereby also bringing down the cost of connectivity. Why don't the regulators take action to support this type of collaboration across the various network service providers? And why don't our governments provide more incentives to network service providers to collaborate to provide this type of infrastructure in a better way that you could reach the last mile and help us as NGOs who are trying to support community health workers and other rural communities to improve universal health access. Thank you.
Great. So if we can keep those really brief because we are almost out of time. There was one more here. And did we have a third one? No. Okay.
Chezi Bezalel, owner and chairman of We4G and Exphone from Israel. It's very interesting for me to know what the panel thinks about the development of the fifth generation in the world and in Africa, and the impact of this development that could have on the world.
I can go ahead.
Okay, you ready? Did you catch the question?
Yeah, 5G.
That last one.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead then.
Well, it's I'm always quoted as saying that I think for Africa 3G is more exciting than 5G. It's slightly tongue-in-cheek, I guess, but we have still such opportunity to connect customers to the internet on 3G in the more peri-urban rural areas, LTE in the metros. We will not have 5G devices, handsets, routers still for many years, and it is a technology that has a lot of talk, a lot of hype, but still many questions around the business model. So I think we have more than enough to get on with over the next few years with the existing technologies. And just quickly to the first question, the real answer is that there is already a lot of infrastructure sharing. Many markets have tower cos. We have a lot of co-location of towers. We have a lot of sharing of transmission, of access fiber, of metro rings. We have national roaming in many of the markets. So this is alive and well, and generally the regulators and regulatory bodies are very supportive, and it's not so much a regulatory issue, and there is a lot of cooperation. The real challenge, I think, in the deep rural areas is around deploying in a cost-effective way, getting them connected to power, getting them connected to transmission. As our colleague from Huawei said, there's many innovative solutions coming out now. Cost of technology is coming down. So, we remain hopeful that we can make a meaningful step in that in the near future.
So, Rob, would you say that there's also infrastructure sharing across utilities, or is it still within the telco sector that you are seeing vibrancy in?
The telcos need towers to install their equipment on. In many markets, tower companies took on that task. So we just become customers of tower companies that have many operators on the same infrastructure. In some markets, we share towers between the operators. This is largely what's shared.
Electrification projects, aerial fiber, are you seeing a lot of that, like water, collaboration with water and sanitation, where there's trenching ones and being able to coordinate that with the telcos? Is that something that's happening, or is there... I
think it's early days. A lot of the time, provided there's forward planning, this can all be incorporated. If we put passive ducts wherever we're rolling out new infrastructure like water or electricity, then it's very easy to come afterwards and use that for telco. But probably there's more to be done there as well.
Right, so it's about smart planning to get us to the smart Africa, right? Thank you very much. Before I let you all go, I would be remiss if I did not do this part. One, also because I noticed that we didn't get any questions from any of the women in the room, and we need to change this in technology conferences specifically. So digital inclusion in Africa, we talked and very fast, about 30% penetration. But the reality is that 70% of Africans are still offline. We are not connecting everyone. These people are excluded from having a vibrant democratic participation, whether it's through debates. Healthcare is moving towards requiring people to be connected, education as well. But most troubling is the fact that the gender-digital divide in this continent is actually getting wider. I would like for you in your concluding remarks to share with us what it is that you are doing in your own space around being affirmative to ensure that we are mainstreaming gender in ICTs as we are rolling out connectivity and inclusion in the region. Would you like to start?
Definitely, we all agree that one of the most important impacts of the digital economy is the social side. And when we talk about the social side, definitely all the people have the rights, especially in rural areas and ultra-rural areas, women as well, and all these kind of things. So again, we have to be innovative in the way how we can include more and more citizens, especially women, okay, and people in the remote areas in this. And let me just give you an example that's happening in Egypt about initiative that has been actually launched by the Ministry of Social Solidarity in full cooperation with the telecom operators, leveraging the power of mobile money, where there is an initiative to actually to have a monthly payment for 2.3 million families, approximately 10 million citizens, okay, through what we call Takaful and Karama, and to use actually to promote these services through mobile, giving them this monthly payment. And there is a whole ecosystem that's working around that, which means that we have to provide these citizens with a simple access to this service, to give them mobiles at a discounted rate, and to allow them to connect to get their money every month. So this is the kind of things, if we follow maybe some of this innovative idea with the collaboration that have social impact, this I am sure will help these people to benefit from these services as such.
I think without necessarily being too provocative, look, I understand the gender element. As a woman in technology, I understand it. But we talk about women in technology without talking about girls in technology, without talking about girls in STEM. So the foundations have to be laid, right? You can't expect women to perform, incredibly well at the later stage of their profession if you don't get them early enough. So I come back to my earlier point around the education, the skills development, and being intentional about the gender inclusion and the girls' inclusion into STEM. That's number one. Two is having more and more role models. You can't become what you can't see. So there's an element of how do we get more leaders in front and sharing best practices. I think the last piece is, when you're talking about relevance of gender and technology, look, technology will go where it is relevant. And it's for us to determine where our societies are, for us to be able to provide the right services. I go to the example that we have with our project in Kenya, with Mawingo, TV White Spaces, working around the Mount Kenya, with the aim of creating 100,000 hotspots, 3 million people online. Now, that doesn't look at gender balances, but it really looks at who's around there driving what businesses, small, medium, mom and pop shops that can actually drive value from connectivity. So again, it's about relevance, it's about how we deploy it, and that will create an equitable distribution within our society. But first and foremost is getting young girls into STEM with the right encouragement and with the right ecosystem.
Thank you.
Merci. Je dirais que pour l'inclusion des femmes au niveau de cette transformation digitale, il faudrait d'abord commencer par l'éducation. Comme Amaret vient de le dire, l'éducation dès le début. C'est vrai, toute la journée, on parle d'infrastructure. Il faudrait qu'il y ait cette base pour qu'il y ait cette infrastructure sur place. Donc, ils savent au moins que l'infrastructure existe et pouvoir les mener vers l'utilisation de cette infrastructure. Au niveau de la Guinée, on assiste les femmes, surtout les jeunes femmes, dès le départ, à les initier aux outils de l'informatique. Par exemple, au niveau du régulateur, nous avons un MOU avec une ONG qui forme les jeunes filles à bas âge. Chaque année, 300 jeunes filles à bas âge, ils le font pendant 2 mois et que nous suivons après pour pouvoir évaluer quel a été l'impact au niveau de leur éducation. Mais aussi au niveau du ministère, le ministère a créé un centre qu'on appelle GovLab et qui crée des applications pour permettre l'insertion des femmes au niveau de TIC. Par exemple, il y a une application au niveau de l'agriculture, comme nous savons que les femmes sont majoritaires au niveau de l'agriculture dans les pays africains, pour pouvoir leur permettre de vendre les différents produits qu'ils arrivent à récolter. Donc, comme il y a des marchés hebdomadaires, ils sauront les prix de ces différents produits sur les différents marchés pour pouvoir les vendre à un bon prix. Donc, il faut d'abord qu'il y ait l'infrastructure en place, continuer l'éducation au niveau de ces femmes et aussi le renforcement des capacités, parce que même les femmes qui sont actuellement dans le secteur, même nous les hommes, moi je suis financier de formation, mais chaque matin quand je me lève, mon informaticien dit on a passé de 1.0 à 4.0. Donc il faut le renforcement des capacités aussi au niveau du secteur pour que ça puisse aller.
The translator is lagging behind the comments. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that gender diversity is a huge issue in our sector. We are one of the least transformed sectors of the economy. So I think, certainly within the telcos, within a company like MTN, we have a lot of focus on our bursary scheme to rebalance that, on our graduate program to rebalance. We sponsor women in ICT programs in a lot of our markets, also to showcase the pioneers of the industry, the role models for others. But we have a lot of work still to do. There's no doubt about that. I think when you look at the customer base, a lot of the gender diversity problem is lying in the rural areas, where we have a lot of women working in subsistence agriculture, not part of the mainstream economy. And so a lot of our efforts to improve rural coverage, mobile money, we run education programs for women's groups in the rural areas. I think also the promotion of payments, where the breadwinner is sending money back into the rural areas, also very important to bring that into the mobile money system, because it's safe, it's secure, and it can be used for specific purposes. So I don't think there's a silver bullet. I just really wanted to say we acknowledge it as an issue that just requires a tremendous amount of work over the next few years.
Great. So I will leave you with a short story of why I'm this passionate about digital inclusion. There is a young boy, 11 years old. He lives in a township in South Africa, in the township called Atteridgeville. It's right next to Pretoria. Bongane gets in trouble almost every day at home because he walks more than 3 kilometers and stays out very late, which is quite dangerous and bothersome to his mother. And the reason he does this is because he walks to where he has the closest hotspot to be able to connect. And so when he was interviewed about, why is he such a troublemaker? Why can't you just get home on time? And why are you so obsessed with being online? His response basically was, when I am online, I no longer live in a shack. I'm going to repeat that. When I am online, I no longer live in a shack. That is the kind of transformation that the connectivity we are talking about is able to bring to some of our rural, poor, and marginalized communities within the continent. So I hope that you will continue these conversations amongst yourselves and realize that the PPP is not just out there in government, but hopefully one emerges out of here that begins to look at some of the issues around demand side that were raised here by all of our panelists. Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining me this morning.